That Thanksgiving night, amid the clinking of crystal and murmured blessings, my mother-in-law looked down the table at me and sneered. Still broke. I see. The room went silent. I set down my wine glass, reached into my purse, and pulled out a brown leather envelope, sliding it across the polished mahogany toward her. Inside wasn't an excuse or explanation. It was the deed to a $15 million estate in Riverton County. As the red seal came into view, someone dropped their silver spoon, and Thanksgiving took a very different turn. My name is Rachel Monroe, and until that November evening, I'd spent 3 years swallowing my pride at every Kane family gathering. The dining room at my mother-in-law's Hawthorne Bluffs estate gleamed with old money crystal chandeliers, casting honey-colored light over china that probably cost more than my monthly salary at Northline Labs. The smell of herb-roasted turkey mixed with Marjorie Kane's signature contempt, both equally suffocating. "Rachel, dear." Marjorie's voice cut through the dinner conversation like a scalpel. "That dress is so practical. Clearance rack at Macy's." She didn't wait for an answer, turning to her sister Patricia with a theatrical whisper that carried perfectly. "Some people just don't understand that appearance reflects character." My husband Evan shifted uncomfortably beside me but said nothing. He never did. At 34, he still couldn't meet his mother's eyes when she was in one of her moods. His younger sister Brianna smirked from across the table, adjusting her phone to get a better angle for her Instagram story. "Mom's antique china is literally goals," she captioned, making sure to pan across to me fumbling with the wrong fork. "Speaking of appearances," Marjorie continued, refilling her wine glass with deliberate slowness. "I ran into Jennifer Hartley at the club yesterday. Her daughter-in-law just made partner at Whitman and Associates. Drives a Tesla." "Bought a vacation home in Aspen." She paused, eyes boring into mine. It must be so fulfilling for Jennifer, having a daughter-in-law who contributes. I kept my breathing steady, cutting my turkey with mechanical precision. The meat was dry. Everything at Marjorie's table looked perfect but tasted like sawdust. "Mom," Evan finally mumbled. "Rachel works hard at that little lab job." Marjorie interrupted. "Please, operating logistics isn't exactly rocket science, though I suppose someone has to do the grunt work." She turned to Uncle Richard. "Did you know Rachel was unemployed for 3 months last year? During the restructuring, thank God Evan could support them both." The restructuring? She made it sound like I'd been fired for incompetence rather than caught in corporate downsizing along with 200 other employees. I'd used those 3 months to freelance for Cobalt Harbor Ventures, actually earning more than my regular salary. But Marjorie had already written her narrative, Rachel the burden, Rachel the failure, Rachel the broke. "Perhaps we should discuss something else," Cousin Laura suggested weakly. "Oh, I'm just concerned," Marjorie said, touching her pearl necklace. "Financial stress ruins marriages. I read an article about it in the Times. Evan, darling, you really should consider a prenuptial agreement. It's never too late." That's when she raised her glass for the toast that would change everything. The crystal caught the light as she stood, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd never been challenged in her own home. "Let's give thanks for family," she began, scanning the table with the satisfaction of a queen surveying her subjects. "For prosperity, for tradition, for those who uphold the Kane family standards." Her gaze landed on me with surgical precision. "And let's hope that those who are struggling find their footing soon. Here's to my daughter-in-law, may she finally find a decent job and stop being so broke." Someone gasped. Brianna actually laughed. The word broke hung in the air like a slap, echoing off the dining room's vaulted ceiling. I felt 20 pairs of eyes on me, waiting to see if I'd cry, storm out, or simply dissolve into the floorboards. Instead, I reached into my purse. My fingers brushed against the leather envelope I'd been carrying for 3 hours, waiting for exactly this moment. Behind Marjorie, the glass cabinet displayed the crown jewel of her collection, a framed photograph labeled "The Kane Legacy, Est 1901." the family's ancestral estate that had been sold off during the Depression. She spoke of it constantly, the glory that was lost, the heritage that defined them. I pulled out the envelope and set it on the table with a soft thud. "Marjorie," I said quietly, my voice steady as granite, "I have something you might want to see." The envelope sat between us like a loaded gun, but I wasn't ready to pull the trigger. Not yet. First, Marjorie needed to understand exactly who she'd been dismissing all these years. I met Evan 5 years ago at a medical equipment conference in Boston. Back then, I was a rising star at Northline Labs, managing supply chain operations for their entire East Coast division. Evan was charming, attentive, everything his mother wasn't. For 6 months, our relationship was perfect until I met Marjorie. "She's not our kind of people," I'd overheard her telling Evan after our first dinner together. "A state school education parents who are teachers. Evan, darling, think of the children. Genetics matter." But Evan loved me, or at least I thought he did. We married, despite Marjorie's thinly veiled protests. She controlled everything about the wedding, the venue, the guest list, even my dress. "That bohemian thing you picked out won't photograph well," she'd said, selecting a traditional gown that cost $15,000. "Don't worry about the price, dear. Consider it an investment in not embarrassing the family." The real control started after the honeymoon. Marjorie had opinions about where we should live not more than 10 minutes from her, where I should work somewhere more prestigious, and when we should have children immediately to secure the lineage. When Northline Labs announced restructuring 14 months ago, she practically celebrated. "It's a sign," she'd told Evan over Sunday brunch while I sat right there. "Rachel should focus on homemaking. The Kane women don't need careers." What she didn't know was that I'd seen the restructuring coming 3 months in advance. While my colleagues panicked, I'd quietly lined up consulting work with Cobalt Harbor Ventures, a private equity firm specializing in agricultural innovation. My severance package plus the consulting fees actually tripled my income during those unemployed months. But I let Marjorie believe her version of events. It was easier than fighting. The real opportunity came through a casual conversation with my Cobalt Harbor client. Silver Meadow Holdings, a luxury farm estate developer, was hemorrhaging money. They'd overextended on a massive project, the Highfield Estate, 60 acres of pristine lakefront property in Riverton County. The same property Marjorie had been drooling over in Architectural Digest. $15 million is actually below market, she'd said at last Easter's dinner, waving the magazine around. But the cultural value immeasurable. It was built by railroad money in 1898. The Carnegie family summered there. If I could acquire Highfield, the Kane name would mean something again. That's when the plan formed. Not all at once, but slowly, like frost spreading across glass. I incorporated R.M. Trust through a lawyer in Delaware, keeping my maiden name off all public documents. Pioneer Federal approved a credit line based on my consulting income and a modest cryptocurrency portfolio I'd been building since college. Another thing Marjorie would have mocked if she'd known. "Digital funny money," she called it once, "for people who can't afford real investments." The negotiation with Silver Meadow took 3 months. They were desperate, bleeding cash weekly. I offered $12 million cash, with a 45-day close. They countered at 13.5. We settled at 13.8, with me taking on some minor liens. Still a steal for property that would appraise at over $20 million in 5 years. Harper Vale, my attorney, had everything prepared weeks ago. The deed, the trust documents, the recording statements, all waiting for my signal. I'd even invited Harper to Thanksgiving dinner, introducing them as a friend from my volunteer work when they arrived an hour ago. Currently sitting in the living room with a glass of wine. Waiting. "You've been planning this," Evan had said last night when I'd hinted at a surprise for his mother. He thought I meant the artisanal chocolates in my purse. The memory faded as Marjorie's voice pulled me back to the present. She was still standing, glass raised, waiting for me to respond to her toast. The rest of the family watched like spectators at a blood sport. "Before we continue," I said, not touching my glass, "I should mention something. That restructuring at Northline. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. Funny how being broke can motivate you to make some changes. Marjorie's smile tightened. Oh, did you finally update that ancient Honda of yours? Something like that, I replied, my hand still resting on the envelope. Actually, I made an investment. A rather significant one. The room seemed to hold its breath. Even Brianna lowered her phone. An investment! Marjorie's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. Did you buy some little stocks on that app? What's it called? Robinhood? How precious! The football game blared from the living room where the men had retreated with their bourbon. Nobody wanted to miss the fourth quarter, but the tension in the dining room was pulling them back like a magnet. Uncle Richard stood in the doorway, pretending to check the score while obviously eavesdropping. Mom, please, Evan muttered into his cranberry sauce. What, I'm being supportive. Marjorie settled back into her chair with practiced elegance. Everyone starts somewhere, though perhaps next time. Rachel, you should consult with people who actually understand money before making investments. She made air quotes around the word, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the light. 3 weeks ago, the family group chat had been brutal. I'd offered to bring green bean casserole to Thanksgiving, my grandmother's recipe, actually quite famous in our small Kentucky hometown. Marjorie's response. Store-bought is fine, dear. Save your money. Brianna had added a laughing emoji. Then came the private messages. Screenshots I'd saved. Your SL really thinks she can cook. Bet she uses canned beans. Food stamps gourmet. The breaking point came yesterday. Evan had left his phone unlocked, and I saw the text from his mother. Remind Rachel to park in the back. The Weatherbees are coming, and I don't want them seeing that embarrassing car. Now, Brianna was live streaming again, phone propped against the centerpiece. Guys, Mom is literally roasting someone at Thanksgiving dinner. This is sending me. She stage whispered to her followers, making sure to capture my face in the frame. The viewer count climbed 847, 848, 849. Actually, Marjorie, I said, standing slowly, I did consult with experts, several of them. Would you like to meet one? I walked to the living room doorway. Harper, could you join us for a moment? Harper Vale entered like they owned the place, which, given their billable hours, they practically did. Immaculate suit, leather portfolio, the kind of presence that made Marjorie automatically straighten her posture. This is Harper Vale, I announced. Senior partner at Vale & Rowan. They've been advising me on my recent acquisition. Marjorie's smile flickered. Vale & Rowan handled old money. Real money. She knew the name. Acquisition, Patricia whispered. What kind of acquisition? Real estate, I said simply. Harper, do you have the documents? Harper placed their portfolio on the table with theatrical precision, but I raised my hand. Not yet. I want to share something first. I pulled out my phone, finding the saved folder labeled Evidence. 6 months of screenshots, emails, messages. But I selected just a photo from Marjorie's own Instagram, posted 3 months ago. She stood in front of Highfield Estate during a charity tour. Caption reading, "One day, this masterpiece will be mine. Some of us are destined for greatness." Old money, Jocker estate goals. Know your worth. You posted this in August, I said, showing the phone around the table. You said Highfield was your dream, your destiny. You said people like you, people with breeding and class, deserved places like that. I don't see what this has to do with anything, Marjorie snapped, but her voice had lost its edge. Brianna, I said suddenly, turning to my sister-in-law. You're still live, aren't you? How many viewers? She checked, confused. Like 1,200. Why? Perfect audience size. I moved back to my seat, the leather envelope still untouched. Marjorie, you asked earlier about my job situation. Let me clarify, I never stopped working. During the restructuring, I consulted for 3 different firms, including a rather successful agricultural development company. My hourly rate was 4 times my Northline salary. That's not possible, she breathed. Ask Harper. They have the tax documents. But here's the interesting part. One of my clients was in distress. They needed to liquidate a premium asset, quickly, quietly, and I happened to have the means and the motivation to help them. My phone buzzed. A text from Harper. Recording complete at 8:45 p.m. Congratulations, Ms. Monroe. 8:45, 15 minutes ago. While Marjorie was calling me broke, the deed to her dream estate was being officially recorded in my name at the county clerk's office. You didn't, Evan said suddenly, understanding dawning on his face. Rachel, tell me you didn't. Didn't what? Marjorie demanded. What are you talking about? I finally picked up the envelope, feeling its weight. Inside was $15 million worth of revenge, wrapped in legal documentation and tied with a bow of poetic justice. Brianna, I said calmly, make sure you're getting this. Your followers are about to witness something historic. 6 months ago, I'd sat in a sterile conference room at Silver Meadow Holdings, watching their CEO practically weep over spreadsheets. The Highfield estate was bleeding them dry $700,000 in monthly carrying costs, no viable buyers at their asking price, and creditors circling like vultures. We need $13 million minimum, he'd said. Desperate. Cash. No contingencies. I'd excused myself to make a phone call. Not to Evan, who would have run straight to Marjorie. Not to my family, who would have thought I'd lost my mind. I called Harper Vale, whom I'd met through my Cobalt Harbor work. Hypothetically, I'd said, if someone wanted to purchase a $15 million estate without their spouse's family knowing, how would one structure that? Harper had laughed. Hypothetically anonymous trust. Delaware incorporation. Separate financial streams. Why you planning to surprise someone? Something like that. The plan unfolded like origami in reverse complex folds, becoming simple, clean lines. First, I incorporated R.M. Trust using my grandmother's maiden name, Reeves. The Delaware filing was public record, but who would think to look? Then came the financing. My cryptocurrency portfolio, which I'd started as a joke in grad school with $2,000, had exploded to just over $3 million. Not enough for Highfield, but enough for Pioneer Federal to take me seriously. You're applying for a commercial loan. The banker had been skeptical until he saw my consulting contracts. Cobalt Harbor Ventures, Meridian Capital, Greenstone Advisory. All legitimate, all verifiable, all paying me consultant rates that would make Marjorie choke on her Chablis. The interesting part was the negotiation itself. Silver Meadow's CEO thought he was dealing with some East Coast investment group. We did everything through Harper. Every document signed with the trust's name. I even hired an actor to play me in video calls, a stern-looking woman in her 60s who spoke in monosyllables and made outrageous demands. My client wants the chandelier in the main ballroom replaced, the actress had said during one call, reading from my script. The current one is too modern. It's from 1894, the CEO had protested. Exactly. Too modern. The absurd requests were strategic every time they gave in on something ridiculous. They felt like they'd won when I compromised on price. We started at $11 million. They wanted $16. We settled at $13.8, with me taking on $200,000 in liens that I could clear within 6 months. But the real genius was the timing. I knew Marjorie's calendar better than she did. Every November, she hosted Thanksgiving. Every November, she got drunk on power and wine. Every November, she found new ways to humiliate me. This year, I'd scheduled the closing for 6 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day. Are you insane? Harper had asked. Nobody closes on Thanksgiving? Exactly, I'd replied. Nobody will see it coming. The paperwork was a masterpiece of legal engineering. The deed would be recorded electronically at exactly 8:45 p.m. After the county's emergency filing system kicked in, it cost an extra $5,000 to arrange. But Harper knew someone who knew someone. Money talks, especially when it speaks in cash. I'd even planted seeds with Marjorie herself. Last month, at her book club, I'd mentioned casually that Highfield was struggling. Such a shame, I'd sighed. If only someone with vision could save it. Someone with money, you mean, she'd corrected. Vision without capital is just dreaming. Rachel, you'd understand if you'd ever had either. The final piece fell into place this morning. Harper had texted at 9:30 a.m. Seller signed, funds released from escrow, recording scheduled for tonight. The notary will be at your location by 7. I'd read it while helping Marjorie set the table, using her grandmother's china that she mentioned cost $8,000 a place setting. Careful with those, she'd warned. They're worth more than your car. Now, sitting at this same table, I watched the color drain from her face as she began to understand. Harper stood beside me, briefcase open, pulling out document after document with practiced efficiency. What is this? Marjorie's voice had gone thin, sharp. This, Harper announced, is the recorded deed for Highfield Estate, Riverton County, parcel 447B. As of 8:45 p.m. tonight, the legal owner is R.M. Trust, with Ms. Rachel Monroe as sole beneficiary and trustee. The silence was so complete I could hear the ice maker cycling in the kitchen. That's impossible, Marjorie whispered. Highfield isn't even for sale. It was, I corrected, to qualified buyers, with cash and vision. Brianna's phone shook in her hand, the live stream still running. The viewer count had hit 2,000. Comments flooded the screen too fast to read. I stood slowly, keeping my movements deliberate, controlled. The leather envelope remained closed in my hands as I walked back to my seat. Every eye tracked my movement like I was carrying a live grenade. You know what I love about Thanksgiving, Marjorie, I said, settling back into my chair with theatrical calm. It's about gratitude, being thankful for what we have, for who we are, for knowing our place in the world. Don't, Evan whispered beside me. Please, Rachel. Your son is right, I continued, ignoring him. I should be grateful. After all, you've taught me so much about my place. Below you, beneath you, never quite good enough for the Kane family standards. The dining room's honey light seemed sharper now, casting everyone in stark relief. Uncle Richard had fully entered the room, bourbon forgotten. Patricia clutched her pearls, real ones, naturally. The younger cousins had their phones out, sensing drama worth capturing. But let's talk about Highfield, I said, voice conversational. You've mentioned it 50 times this year, that charity tour in August where you posed by the fountain, the Historical Society Gala where you told everyone it should be in capable hands, the country club lunch where you said what was it exactly? People like us understand the responsibility of preserving culture. Marjorie's knuckles were white around her wine glass. How dare you! I'm not done! I opened my phone again, scrolling to another saved photo. Remember this. Brianna, your mom's vision board from her New Year's party. Highfield was right in the center. Manifest your destiny, she said. Visualize your worth. Harper cleared their throat. Ms. Monroe, shall we proceed with the documentation? In a moment. I stood again, this time walking to the cabinet where Marjorie's family photo sat. This is beautiful, by the way. The Kane legacy, established 1901, except I turned back to face them. The Kanes lost everything in 1932. Bad investments. Your grandfather was a traveling salesman, wasn't he? Nothing wrong with that? Of course, unless you've built your entire identity on a lie about old money. You investigated me. Marjorie's voice pitched higher. No, you told me. 3 glasses of wine at Easter, crying about how unfair it was that the new money people didn't understand breeding. Your exact words, we had to rebuild from nothing, but class is in the blood. My phone buzzed. Another text from Harper. Notary here. Side entrance. Excuse me for one moment, I said, walking toward the kitchen. I need to let someone in. You're not going anywhere. Marjorie stood, swaying slightly. This is my house. You're right, I agreed. This is your house. For now. The notary was a small, efficient woman named Janet who'd driven 2 hours for triple overtime. She followed me back to the dining room, her official seal prominent in her hand. "Good evening," she announced to the stunned room. "I'm here to verify and notarize the transfer documents for Highfield Estate." "This is insane," Patricia whispered. "Marjorie, call someone. Call the police." "On what grounds?" Harper asked mildly. "A legal real estate transaction, Ms. Monroe. If you would." I finally opened the envelope. The documents spilled out like accusation: the deed, the title insurance, the survey, the transfer tax receipts. Each page was a small violence against everything Marjorie had believed about me, about herself, about the natural order of her universe. $13.8 million, I read from the closing statement, plus $200,000 in liens, cleared this morning. Total investment $14 million. Current appraisal value $15.2 million. Projected value in 5 years $22 million. Where? Marjorie's voice cracked. "Where did you get that kind of money?" "The same place you got yours," I replied. "Work. Just different work than you imagined. Smarter work. While you were posting Instagram photos and planning charity galas, I was building something real." Brianna's live stream had exploded 4,000 viewers now. The comments were a blur. "OMG Queen." "She really said not today." "Satan." "Rich people drama hits different." "Evan." Marjorie turned desperately to her son. "Your wife, you must have known." "He didn't," I said simply. "He was too busy letting you run his life to notice what I was doing with mine." Evan's face was pale, his jaw clenched. This is cruel. This is cruel." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Was it cruel when your mother made me move my wedding dress fitting 3 times because it conflicted with her hair appointments? Was it cruel when she told my parents they were simple people at our rehearsal dinner? Was it cruel 10 minutes ago when she called me broke in front of everyone?" The room held its breath. Even the football game in the background seemed to pause. "Sign here," Janet said quietly, sliding papers toward me. "And here. Initial here." Each signature was a declaration of independence. R. Monroe. R. Monroe. R. Monroe. This is the certificate of transfer," I announced, holding up the embossed document so everyone could see. "Recorded tonight at 8:45 p.m. with Riverton County. Property address 1500 Lakeshore Drive, Highfield Estate. New owner Rachel Monroe as trustee of R.M. Trust. Insured value $15 million. The paper trembled slightly in the air, not from my nerves, but from the force of Marjorie's breathing across the table. She looked like she'd been slapped with her own checkbook. "Would you like to see the insurance appraisal?" Harper offered, producing another document. "Liberty Mutual assessed it last week. The main house alone is valued at $8 million. The guest houses add another 3. The lakefront footage, the private beach, the historic designation, it all adds up." "You're lying." Marjorie's voice was barely a whisper. "This is fraud. It has to be." Janet, the notary, stepped forward with professional calm. "Ma'am, I've verified every document." "The funds were confirmed by Pioneer Federal Bank. The seller's signatures were authenticated. This is completely legitimate." "Harper," I said, "would you please confirm for everyone that this transaction is legal and binding?" Harper adjusted their glasses with practiced authority. "The sale closed at 6 p.m. this evening. All funds were transferred via wire. The deed was recorded electronically with Riverton County at exactly 8:45 p.m. There is no contingency period, no financing condition, no right of rescission. Ms. Monroe owns Highfield Estate, free and clear except for minor liens she's already satisfied." "But how?" Patricia gasped. "Rachel she couldn't possibly have $15 million. I finished for her. "You're right. I don't have $15 million in cash lying around, but I had enough for the down payment. Excellent credit for the loan, and most importantly, I looked directly at Marjorie. Vision and capital." "Your words." remember. Brianna's phone was shaking so badly she could barely hold it steady. The viewer count had passed 6,000. Comments flooded in faster than the screen could display them. Someone had started screen recording, and clips were already being shared to TikTok. "You did this to humiliate me," Marjorie said, her voice gaining strength through rage. "You planned this whole thing to embarrass me at my own Thanksgiving." "No," I corrected. "I planned this to buy a beautiful estate that was being mismanaged into bankruptcy. The timing—" I shrugged. "Call it poetic justice." I pulled out another document, this one in a clear protective sleeve. This is my favorite part. The Historical Society's letter about Highfield. Did you know it was built by Margaret Highfield? A woman who made her fortune in shipping when everyone said women couldn't run businesses? She was called new money by families like what you pretended the Canes were. They mocked her for being working class, for her lack of breeding. I set the letter down gently. She died the richest woman in the state. "Get out," Marjorie hissed. "Get out of my house." "Absolutely," I agreed. "Right after we discuss a few things." I nodded to Harper, who produced 2 more documents. "These need your attention." "I'm not signing anything." "You don't have to sign. Just listen." I picked up the first document. "This is a boundary and access agreement. As the owner of Highfield, I control the private road that connects to your tennis club, the one you use to avoid traffic on Highway 9. I'm keeping it open to club members, but there will be new usage rules." Uncle Richard choked on his bourbon. "That road, we've used it for 40 years. And you still can," I assured him. "As long as you follow the posted guidelines, speed limits, no events without permission, basic courtesy." "This is extortion!" Marjorie shrieked. "This is property rights," Harper corrected. "Your club's easement expired in 2019. They've been using the road at the previous owner's discretion. Now it's at Ms. Monroe's discretion." I held up the second document. "This one's simpler. It's a press release I've prepared about my acquisition. It mentions my journey from unemployed to estate owner. It talks about overcoming adversity, about not letting others define your worth. It's quite inspiring, actually. Several business journals have already expressed interest." "You wouldn't dare." "I wouldn't have to," I said, glancing at Brianna's phone. "If we can come to an understanding. Your daughter's live stream has done most of the work for me." "How many viewers now?" "Brianna." 8,000, she whispered, looking sick. "Mom, should I—" "Don't touch it," Marjorie and I said simultaneously. "If you end it now," I explained. "It looks like you're hiding something. The internet hates that. Better to let it run." Evan finally found his voice. "Rachel, this is enough. You've made your point." "Have I?" I turned to him. "What point would that be, exactly? That you're not broke? That you're successful?" "No, Evan, the point is that I'm done being disrespected. Done being treated like I'm beneath this family. Done pretending that your mother's money makes her better than me." I stood, gathering the documents. "Marjorie, I now own the estate you've coveted for years. The one you said would restore the Kane family legacy. The one you claimed only someone of your caliber deserved." I paused at the head of the table. "Tell me, how does it feel to want something you'll never have?" The silence was beautiful, expensive, worth every penny of $14 million. "Now," I said, pulling out 2 final documents from Harper's portfolio. "Let's discuss the future." The first document was printed on heavy cream paper, legal-sized, with boundary and access agreement across the top. The second was simpler, a single page with public acknowledgement in bold letters. "Option 1, I began, my voice steady as a newsreader. "The boundary agreement. You'll notice Highfield's property line extends to within 50 feet of your country club's main entrance. The previous owners never enforced it. I will. No more using my land for overflow parking during your galas. No more sending your landscapers through my property to avoid traffic. Every trespass will be documented and prosecuted." "That's petty," Patricia gasped. "That's ownership," I corrected. "But I'm willing to be generous." Sign this agreement acknowledging my property rights, and I'll grant you the same informal access you've enjoyed for years. Refuse, and I'll have a fence installed by Monday. Marjorie's face had gone from pale to purple. You can't. I can. I will. And your country club president already knows. I sent him a courtesy notice an hour ago. I checked my phone. He's already responded, asking if we can meet Monday to discuss terms. Seems he's more practical than you. Harper stepped forward. The agreement also covers publicity rights. The Kane family cannot use Highfield's name or image in any promotional materials, charity events, or social media without written consent from Ms. Monroe. Our spring gala photos, Brianna whispered, the realization hitting. We always take them at Highfield's gates. Not anymore, I said. Unless I approve it. In writing. Which brings us to document 2. I held up the single page. Reading aloud, I, Marjorie Kane, acknowledge that my comments regarding Rachel Monroe's financial status were inappropriate and untrue. I apologize for any distress caused and commit to treating all family members with respect, regardless of their economic background. Never, Marjorie spat. Then let me show you what happens next. I pulled out my tablet, opening a folder labeled Thanksgiving 2024. Brianna's live stream has been recording for 43 minutes. The part where you called me broke has already been clipped and shared approximately, I refreshed the page, 200 times. The part where I revealed the deed over 1,000 shares in the last 5 minutes. I turned the tablet toward her. The comments are fascinating. Rich Karen gets owned. Mother-in-law from hell. Old money versus new money. New money wins. Would you like me to read more? This is blackmail, Uncle Richard said. This is consequences, Harper corrected. Ms. Monroe is offering a private resolution to a public humiliation. That's quite generous, considering your charity work, I continued, looking at Marjorie. The Evergreen Circle, the Historical Society, the Hospital Board. How do you think they'll react when this video goes viral, when they see their biggest donor publicly shaming someone for being broke, when they realize you're the kind of person who judges worth by bank accounts? Marjorie's hand trembled as she reached for her wine. The glass was empty. I've drafted a press release, I said, pulling up another document on my tablet. Would you like to hear it? Local philanthropist Marjorie Kane learned an important lesson about assumptions this Thanksgiving when her daughter-in-law, previously dismissed as financially unsuccessful, revealed ownership of the historic Highfield estate. The incident, captured on social media, highlights the dangers of economic prejudice, even within families. You wouldn't dare, Marjorie whispered. Try me. I've got interviews lined up with 3 business publications who are very interested in the riches to riches narrative. Working woman overcomes family scorn to achieve American dream. It writes itself. Evan stood between us like a referee without a whistle. Mom, just sign it, please. You're taking her side. Marjorie's voice broke. There shouldn't be sides. He exploded. She's my wife. You're my mother. But you've spent 3 years making her feel worthless. And now? He gestured helplessly at the documents spread across the table. Now she owns Highfield, the estate you've obsessed over. She won. Just sign the papers. It's not about winning, I said quietly. It's about respect. Basic human respect. Something your mother could never give me because I didn't inherit wealth or marry into the right family or go to the right schools. Harper cleared their throat. Ms. Monroe, perhaps we should give Mrs. Kane a moment to consider. She has 5 minutes. I interrupted, checking my phone. At 9:30 p.m., I'm calling my contacts at the Journal. They're holding space for a Monday feature. The Thanksgiving Takeover. How one woman turned humiliation into real estate victory. Marjorie looked around the table for support. Patricia avoided her eyes. Richard studied his bourbon. The cousins were all on their phones, probably watching the live stream clips already spreading across social media. Even Brianna had gone silent. Her phone finally lowered. 2 signatures, I said, sliding both documents across the table with a pen. That's all. Sign them, and this stays in the family. Refuse, and by Monday morning, you'll be famous for all the wrong reasons." The pen sat between us like a surrender flag waiting to be raised. Marjorie's hand shook as she picked up the pen. The dining room had become a courtroom, and she was about to sign her own verdict. "This is coercion," she whispered, but her fingers moved across the page anyway. M. Kane. Date. Initials. The boundary agreement first, then the public acknowledgement. Each stroke of ink was a small death of the person she'd thought she was untouchable, superior, above consequences. "Witnessed and notarized," Janet announced, applying her official seal with a decisive thump. 9:28 p. November 28th, 2024. Harper collected the documents with surgical precision, placing them in separate folders. "Ms. Monroe, you now have executed agreements. Mrs. Kane, you'll receive copies within 48 hours. I picked up the key to Highfield from my purse, a heavy, ornate brass piece that looked like it belonged in a museum. "There's one more thing," I said, standing. "This is mine now. The estate you said I'd never be good enough to visit, much less own. And I've decided who's welcome there." I looked around at the table, making eye contact with each person. "Patricia, Richard, you've always been kind to me. You're welcome any time. The cousins, too, except for those who participated in the group chat mockery. You know who you are." "And us?" Evan asked quietly. I turned to my husband, this man who'd never once defended me, who'd chosen comfort over courage every single time. "That depends on you, Evan. When you decide whether you're a husband or just your mother's son, we'll talk." "You're leaving." He looked stunned. "I'm going to my new home. $15 million of limestone and legacy, overlooking the lake." I picked up my purse, nodding to Harper and Janet. "Thank you both for coming on Thanksgiving." "Our pleasure," Harper said, barely concealing a smile. "Congratulations on your acquisition, Ms. Monroe." Brianna finally ended her live stream, her face pale. "The comments," she whispered. "They're brutal. Mom, they're calling you don't," Marjorie said sharply. "Just don't." I paused at the dining room entrance, looking back at the table that had been my monthly torture chamber for 3 years. The perfect china, the crystal that sang when you flicked it, the silver that required special polish, all of it suddenly looked cheap, like props in a play about people pretending to be more than they were. You know what's ironic? Marjorie. I said, "You spent so much time trying to make me feel worthless that you never noticed I was building my worth. Every insult was motivation. Every slight was fuel. You created the very person who could take away what you wanted most." "Get out," she said, but the words had no power anymore. "One last thing," I added, pulling out my phone. That live stream Brianna wasn't the only one recording. I have the whole evening documented, including our negotiations. If you violate either agreement, if you speak badly of me publicly, if you trespass on Highfield property, if you try to spin this story to your advantage, everyone will see exactly who you really are. The front door opened to cold November air. Beyond the circular driveway, past the perfectly manicured hedges that Marjorie paid someone to maintain, my Honda Civic sat parked in back where she'd demanded I leave it. I walked past it without stopping. "Where are you going?" Evan called from the doorway. "Your car. Harper's driving me to Highfield." I called back. "I'll send someone for the Honda tomorrow. After all, the owner of a $15 million estate shouldn't have to drive herself home on the night of her victory." Harper's Mercedes waited at the front entrance exactly where Marjorie had forbidden me to park. We pulled away from the Kane house, leaving behind the warm lights and cold hearts, the sterling silver and tarnished souls. "That was quite a performance," Harper said as we turned onto the highway. 3 years in the making," I replied, watching the Kane house disappear in the side mirror. "Worth every penny." 20 minutes later, we pulled up to Highfield's gates. My gates. They opened automatically. I'd had the access codes changed at noon. The main house rose before us like something from a dream, all lit windows and limestone grandeur. The lake sparkled beyond, holding the moon's reflection like a promise. I stepped out of the car, breathing in the cold air that smelled of pine and possibility. From my pocket, I pulled out the brass key not because I needed it. The modern locks were all electronic, but because I wanted to feel its weight one more time. "Welcome home, Ms. Monroe," Harper said. "Thank you," I said, looking up at my $15 million response to being called broke. "And Harper, make sure those agreements are filed first thing Monday. I want everything official before Marjorie has time to think of a countermove." "Already arranged," they assured me. "Enjoy your Thanksgiving. Rachel, you've earned it." As Harper's taillights disappeared down the drive, I stood alone in front of Highfield Estate. Somewhere behind me, in a house that suddenly felt very small, Marjorie Kane was learning what it felt like to want something she could never have, and I was learning what it felt like to never have to ask permission again. I unlocked the massive front door with my heavy brass key, stepped inside my new home, and closed the door on my old life forever. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story of sweet revenge resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Have you ever had a moment where you proved someone wrong who doubted you? I'd love to hear your stories too.